Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raad Life. I wanted to depart a little bit from our normal focus with COVID and sort of businesses and how, with the reopening, things are happening or not happening, and what are some of the practices that are worth looking into, and some of the mistakes and potential pitfalls that businesses are doing right now that could harm their brand in the future. And I wanted to focus today on another sector. I wanted to focus on nonprofits and just how that world has changed. Many of you may know that I've been involved in that area for, almost 20 years now, in one capacity or the other. Rebuilding Together Orange County was a board I served on. San Clemente Historical Society, I served on that board for about 13 years. There's a bunch of other organizations. I've even started a foundation in San Clemente called the Spanish Village Foundation, with two friends of mine, John Alpe and Mike Cotter. And I currently sit on the board of Project Independence, and I chair the Arab American Civic Council. So I have slowed down a little bit, but there was a time when I basically had more demands on my time, probably during the course of the week, in terms of capacity for volunteering with nonprofits. And throughout that period, I've seen things change, and I've seen things that are consistent, like struggle with sustainability, funding, what have you. And I wanted to just explore what's going on right now, and how prior to COVID, we had a change of the landscape when it came to nonprofits, how they were basically able to sustain themselves, how they were able to compete for attention, for getting their messaging out effectively or non-effectively. And organizations that started out as grassroots organizations were now basically facing a lot more challenges. And those are things that you could say historically have always been a challenge for nonprofits, or struggles, and it will always continue to be in one capacity or other. But there was a paradigm shift that happened that really changed the way that things that funding were available, grants were available. And then here we have this sort of crisis that happens, and there is now an influx of support and funding and donations to certain nonprofits, especially if they're dealing with sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, shelter, water, emotional support, safety, health. But will that continue after this? How do we basically plan to operate a nonprofit or support a nonprofit in the future? With that being said, I want to introduce you guys to Barbara O'Brien, who has served in a lot of capacities, marketing and fundraising, philanthropy, on a number of organizations in Orange County. And I'm going to let her tell her story. She is a fellow South Orange County resident, and she's also going to be doing something else. We're going to be doing something else together, but I'm going to leave that bit of news until the end of the show, and then we'll share it together with you guys. So without further ado, let me bring Barbara in from the waiting room. Let's see if she can join us here, and we can start talking about some of this stuff. Barbara, are you there?
Yes, I'm right here.
You are.
Yes.
And it looks like your lovely dining room behind you, right?
Yeah, it is.
No,
My messy dining room.
It's a messy. No, you know what? You're just busy. There's a lot of stuff on that table. I mean, that's what dining tables, and as an interior designer, I'll tell you, that's what most formal dining rooms basically end up being: boardrooms and offices and
Right.
to-do lists and what have you. So
Yeah.
you've been busy. I know you've been busy. So before I brought you on, I was talking about how the nature of nonprofits, like, just to switch the direction of this show a little bit from what I've been doing the last couple of weeks, is to not necessarily talk about COVID as being what's going on in the period of COVID, but talking about how the landscape for nonprofits, and I said that you and I have been kind of involved in nonprofits in different capacities for a long time. So there's been always a challenge with nonprofits as far as repetitive things, fundraising, cost-effective legal support, grant writing is another one. If you don't have that skill built into your organization, you struggle. Where do I get it? Do I get a grant writer? Are they willing to take a percentage because I don't have the funds? I mean, there's all these challenges that happen, and grant writing was something that was maybe different before, and then we went through a paradigm shift where funding changed. And I want you to take a minute and just kind of walk people through that a little bit at some point, how that changed way before even COVID. And then here we have the situation, which is a kind of a communal crisis that's pulling people together. There's maybe an increase in donations to certain organizations that are handling basic needs: shelter, water, safety, health, food, and then, but that's just now. And so it's not like we had a challenging time and now we've passed it and now everybody's going to be donating going forward. There's going to be, again, a challenge to, grab attention, sustain attention, clear messaging, all this stuff. And your involvement both in philanthropy, marketing, technology, and, fundraising, I think it's a really unique mix. And then I told people that you and I have a surprise for them, but we're not going to announce it until the end of the show. So they have to stick around and listen to the whole
Okay. All right.
So please take a minute and tell people about your background, what you've been involved in, how you found your way into nonprofit. It's always usually an interesting story. I find for people that are involved either in the senior industry or nonprofit, there's something that's personal that draws them into it. So if you don't mind going there, give me the quote unquote Paul Harvey rest of the story background on this thing.
Well, I think that it really started when I was taking some leadership training with a group of very diverse professional women, and we were starting to read all of the books of John Maxwell. And so he's got this really great leadership training program, but it's all about servant leadership. So I'd say that that's really where it started for me, is that whole idea of the leaders building leaders, and kind of a different way. Actually, it was a completely different way to think about leadership for me. So I had different jobs in different corporations, loved it, loved the creativity piece of that, of marketing and advertising, PR, bringing a product to life, and bringing it to the marketplace. Very, very exciting. So I.
But what am I hearing? But that wasn't really enough once you got exposed to this way of thinking. You needed more.
Right.
Sort of something that satisfied another side of you. I refer to it, Barbara, sometimes it's funny. It's like I say, there's a part of volunteering that feeds my soul in a way that accomplishing a project or getting that bonus paycheck or that reward financially. I'm not knocking it, but there's a part of my soul that is only fed by actually volunteering. And I don't know if it stems from, leaving things better than you find them, leaving people better than you find them. And that really requires a different kind of commitment and giving of yourself to your point, the servant's heart kind of component.
Yes.
If you don't mind me asking, when do you think, in your life, when did that happen? Was it something that you always had and maybe kind of put to the back burner? Is it something that you kind of you found yourself at a moment where you're reflecting on, where do I want to go next? What do I want to do when I grow up, kind of, if you will, jokingly. And then here it is. And you said, okay, I need this to be part of my reality.
I think that it was a dream in a way, because I needed to work, to make a living and have children and boy colleges and all sorts of tuition and costs and expenses. So really, there was a reality about work and work ethic and product that I faced. I always was a volunteer though. So throughout my whole life, I have 2 resumes. I've got my volunteer and nonprofit resume. And then, any time that I could, I would try to integrate, both the business I was working on, my clients, something creative, cause marketing. I could give you many examples. With Cox Business, I did some things with Brass Tech and Bear Paints. Just any opportunity to sort of pair doing good in the community with business is always good for business. So that kind of started, I would say, probably around 2010 and beyond. And so kind of trying to integrate.
I'm just throwing some stuff up behind me there, just like some of the things you've been involved in, and in sort of I think in a professional capacity, even more than just volunteering. But you, my friend, are a serial volunteer. You just have to figure out a way to actually also get a paycheck out of it.
Well, actually, it's really like that. So that's what I'm saying is a goal. So one day I thought, well, my tenure at Time Warner Cable became charter, brought by charter, became Spectrum, and my tenure there was done. And so I had a little time to think about if there's anything I wanted to do. And it's out of John Maxwell. He says, the best job to have is one that doesn't feel like a job because you've got this passion for it. Right. So I decided, you know what, I just I loved kids and I wanted to get back into a nonprofit role. So I went back into the school environment. I taught at Capistrano Valley Christian High School for 10
Yeah.
years. So I've got teaching kind of as part of my DNA as well. And so that led me back into actually a nonprofit opportunity to really understand, how to raise money, what is development. And it also was married to my sales background because really development and nonprofit is just like sales in the for-profit world.
Absolutely. It's very much the messaging may be a little bit different, but again, like everything else, if you are a savvy, effective professional in that capacity, you realize that every product, every entity, every whatever requires its own different messaging. Its unique value proposition needs to be highlighted, basically. So,
and it's relationships.
Ultimately,
Rod, it's relationships, right? And it's how you want to work with people you like and that are easy to work with, do what they say they're going to do. And I think that goes a long way. So with all of those logos,
well, I would say
I have a lot of friends that those
yes.
represent friendships to me, and those represent relationships. And I think of great memories and great, projects and programs, and so it's the depth and richness tapestry of my work, volunteer life. And I think that's the key, is to be true to yourself all the time. You bring it all with you. So everything I've done leads to where I am today. Well, and I think that's the key for people, when they're laid off. I mean, I've been laid off.
Yeah. I was going to say, I was going to say that, just to expand on your the idea of relationships, that this is relationships. I would even go, as important as relationships are, let's say in a corporate environment or a nonprofit space, they are even more critically important when it comes to nonprofit space, because the reality is there's a lot of people that are involved in this because it's a passion pursuit, because it is, it's like find something you love and do it, and you'll never work a day in your life, because there's that kind of involvement and commitment to people that are involved in a professional capacity in the nonprofit world. Those people are around for a long time, and they end up being gatekeepers. They end up being, entry points. They become sort of pivotal connection points, and they are actually very good in that capacity. I find, especially like in the senior industry, but I think it applies to all nonprofits, is that you take your role seriously. You are a gatekeeper that is protecting a vulnerable population. So your relationships and the trust in your relationships and the depth of connectivity in your relationships becomes very instrumental in your effectiveness in that role. Even more so, I think, than a non-nonprofit environment. It's too
right. I think that's why it's so difficult. You see the same people over and over again doing the development and fundraising jobs because of those relationships, and they pretty much bring them wherever they go. And that's the difference. You think that people would be very, very loyal to the charity, and they are. So don't get me wrong. There's a very missional part of donors and with their charitable organizations. But then there's also those relationships that those development directors and managers, coordinators, that they develop because they're there and they have the same passion as the people they're serving. So,
Barbara, if that wasn't the case, I mean, it just dawned on me for a second here. If that wasn't the case, if it wasn't about relationships, right, you would not basically find that every time you posted something on Facebook, for example, it asked you whether you wanted to add a donation button on your own personal posting on your own personal page, because what that's saying is expose your friends that you have relationships with to what it is that you are supporting, because you are supporting it, they are likely to also trust the fact that it's worthy of support. And so, yes, there is a loyalty to the mission. There's a loyalty in general to, a particular cause. Let's just take, for example, I don't know, like children's causes or even food, whichever, but like homelessness, right? There's multiple organizations that surface, again, grassroots kind of almost in most cases, because there's a personal story somewhere, right? And they surface, and they're all kind of serving similar populations. They're all serving the homeless. They're all serving people that are in need of shelter. They're all serving,
Mhm.
the women abuse organizations. The women organizations has been a very, if you want to call it a growth industry in the nonprofit world, there's been a lot of nonprofit entities that have showed up, or organizations that are focused on empowering women, protecting women, children, families. So why this one versus that one?
Right,
Why this
right.
one that I support and versus that one? And so it's kind of interesting because that's the connection. It's the
Well,
relationship that
that's
you're
the
talking about.
job of the nonprofit, to have great messaging. They have to tell their story. They have to be compelling. And I think, we discussed this before. I think it's an entrepreneurial spirit that is required
Yeah.
when nonprofits see that there's other nonprofits in the same space, how they can work together, how they can complement each other. I see that happening every day. I'm advising Extraordinary Lives Foundation right now, and they specifically are involved with the mental health of children. And it's specific right now to homeless children who are
Mhm.
experiencing trauma of being homeless. Then you've got the virus, there's no school, there's all sorts of things going on with their families, and then people are losing their jobs. So there's a lot of instability, and they're now partnering with this Family Solutions Collaborative, which is another group of nonprofits that serve the homeless in Orange County. So it's this big group now that's come together to support the homeless community. There are a lot of smaller nonprofits,
Mhm.
and I think we're going to see more of that. It's almost like in corporate life, we call that mergers and acquisitions, but
Mhm.
I don't know if it's going to go that far. But I think there's definitely synergies that are
Mhm.
happening
Mhm.
that I'm very excited about.
Well, and there's two things. One, the homeless situation is interesting because I've been saying this for the last couple of years, because the homeless issue in Orange County has just grown and grown, become more of an issue, more an issue, more an issue. The idea of homelessness has been around. If you ever wanted to check homelessness on Wikipedia, you'll find out this is as common a thing that, as probably from the birth of the nation. I mean, it's not, no country is void of it. It's always going to be there in one capacity or the other, certain percentage or the other. But we kind of basically almost started to shun these people a little bit, and we started, let's basically, painting them with a broad brush stroke as being, you know, um, by choice homeless, drugs, falling on hard times, don't really want to get out of there. And I felt that was very callous, and I was glad that messaging shifted. But one of the
No,
things that
it's mental illness. A lot
well,
of it is
right,
mental.
and so with the homeless situation, like people talk about homeless shelters, there's a need for vertically integrated services to support that. Like you can't just have a homeless shelter and not have sort of a mental health and well-being component as supporting that effort,
Mhm.
right? So to your point, one organization may be a housing organization, the other organization may be a mental health organization, coming together under the same roof. Rather than competing for the same funds, you can actually distribute the funds and more efficiently and more effectively. There may even be economies of scale on the organizational side that could be, so it's not a mergers and acquisition, but there may be like an overarching sort of management, if you will, company that helps all the nonprofits and takes away some of the burden of the internal costs on those kind of roles,
Mhm.
because there's a joint mission. Basically, it's almost like saying, I mean, I don't want to put it into sort of a mechanical thing, but it's like saying you're a car manufacturer and one basically builds the body and the other one builds the electronics and the other one builds the
Right, right.
upholstery,
I think
right?
that's a great analogy. Yeah.
The wheels come from somewhere else, the maintenance servicing later comes from somewhere else, but it's all under one umbrella, right? Vertically integrated organization. The other thing is this entrepreneurial spirit that you kind of touched on, and you and I talked about a little bit before. And I said that I maybe have a new awareness about nonprofits in terms of, in the past, because they were all grassroots organizations at one point or the other, regardless of what the size of them at the moment that I joined them or was involved in them. At one point, I was involved in organizations that, probably have had a lifespan of the last year, and ones that have been around for 20 years, and it so
Mhm. Right.
so so but there was a period where we felt like the only reason nonprofits were challenged and were maybe failing or having a hard time was because they weren't being operated like a corporation. And I realized today that maybe that was really a misnomer and a misguided approach. Not that the efficiencies and sort of the level of seasoning and basically messaging and maybe maximizing impact of limited resources. None of that stuff was not important. And in many cases, because it's a grassroots organization, it may not have that skill set built into it. You may have to hire it. You may have to encourage it on an advisory board capacity, or maybe even bring it in and nurture it as part of your board growth. But I think more accurately, thinking back, and you just said it, I think it's more of an entrepreneurial venture. It requires the passion that comes from an entrepreneurial involvement that is usually at an early stage of a corporation. You have people that are passionately committed to the organization, but it has this sort of malleability and flexibility of an entrepreneurial approach
Right.
versus a vertical infrastructure, kind of corporate organizational chart. And so I'm glad to hear you say that there's a sort of this collaboration that's going on, because that lends itself more to that model
Mhm.
than
I
what.
think people are thinking more along those lines. And I mean, of course, everyone wants their nonprofit to thrive and to resonate with others, with the same heart. But I think when you just look at the commonality, everybody wants to help. And I think the ultimate judge of all of that are the donors. And I think if the message resonates with them and they want to help, ultimately they really want to help. I mean, that is, I would say, common throughout almost every conversation I've ever had. How can I help? How can I help more? How can my impact help more people?
Right.
They want to hear about impact. That's really the name today of what donors really want to have with the finances that they give, and with the volunteers that they give, and how it's impacting the communities.
So
So
let's
I
talk a little
think,
bit, Barbara, about prior to COVID, how the scene for grants and funding and whatever for organizations, for nonprofits, how did that change? How was it before, and how did it change, and why did it maybe change? If you'll take a minute and just maybe tell people that.
well, it was the change in the tax code in the past 2 years. Basically, there was just a passive, if you will, deduction for charitable deductions. You didn't
Yeah.
have to have, itemized deductions. So what we saw in development, and I think why I was able to get my career restarted and pivoted to nonprofit, because nonprofits had to be creative, is that those middle donors, the donors between $500 to $5,000, they completely went away throughout the whole United States. There's been research done.
There was no incentive for them to donate.
No, you could just take that mass deduction and really not even have to give.
Yeah.
So what's the incentive to give? I'm sorry. I mean, the tax benefits really are sometimes, an incentive. So, you still have people giving, but you didn't have it really at the same level. And so what happened is everyone started to really lean on those major donors.
Which
And
is
so
the
you
same.
see,
Which is the same. You're fishing in the same pond. I mean, especially if you're regional, you're going to
yes,
those same, very well off financially private donors. You're going to particularly some of the corporations that are philanthropical, and everybody's going to those same first sources. Everybody's going to the same well, basically.
right. Well, it is like that, especially when you're regional. So, I was with Second Harvest Food Bank, and we
Yeah.
were very fortunate to be part of Feeding America. But like Extraordinary Lives Foundation, that's very regional, and was really supported by a local OBGYN and his wife, started by them in Orange County. And it's really grown, and it's now 5 years old. And I see tremendous growth happening. So it's just like any business. But I think the key is to really just continue to remember who you're serving, and have those donors who are passionate. Make sure that you're connecting with them. Donor centric
So
more than
do
I
you
would say. Excuse me.
go ahead? Finish your thought, Barbara.
Well, it would be donor centric fundraising.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus the galas, and people are tired of all that. The traditional ways to raise the money. We still need to do that. It is fun to get everybody together, but
yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that birthdays on social media have become a form of fundraising. That I took part, for example, in a virtual walk for Ronald McDonald, where I was just basically walking on my own with social distancing
Right.
around Big Bear. And, people were wondering why I was wearing red and white striped socks, probably, right? And a Ronald McDonald face mask. But that still was a way of fundraising. And you could argue that used to be the rarity. It used to be that, you slept and fundraised, or you virtual walked fundraised if you could not participate in the real
Right.
event. But then if, I'm curious to see what were the numbers like this time around, and whether there's a justification other than the social component and the gathering, which I'm not taking away the importance of, but in terms of just return on investment, because those events also are costly. Those golf tournaments where it used to be like, we need help with fundraising. What should we do? Let's have a golf tournament. And I'm thinking,
right. Well, golf tournaments actually aren't very profitable,
exactly,
generally speaking.
But I'm like, what does a historical society in San Clemente have to do with a golf tournament? Like, how is that connected to the mission? And it was really funny because I found myself over a period of about 3 or 4 years, almost like sounding like a record when something would come up. Like we would okay, how does this connect to the mission? Like, let's
Right.
think a little bit further. Like, you want to
Well,
have
I think
golf.
you're talking about challenging nonprofits to be creative,
Right.
which is why they were looking kind of in a different pool of professionals.
Talent, yeah.
That, yes, that could, come up with an idea that actually made sense with a historical type of foundation, or whether it's with children, or it needs to really resonate with the people that are invited in to come.
I'll tell you what we ended up doing. We ended up doing basically we could not do it. Ironically, there was a way to do it. You could do it at the municipal golf course in San Clemente, which is a historical resource amenity that was part of the original founding of the city. You could actually do it where you basically did a 1920s theme, where you had, the long socks, and, you only allowed people to play with mashie niblets or something like that. Golf clubs. For those who know what a mashie niblet is, if you don't, go Google it. But there was a way to connect that, to make it part of the language of the organization. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I didn't even think that was going on. But yes, if you're a smart nonprofit, you're looking for that creativity in your messaging, because otherwise it's just another invitation to another golf tournament, it's another invitation to another gala. And you question, you as a board member, at one point I had to start having question. If we're spending $10,000 to put on an event that only brings in $8,000, then we're already $2,000 in the hole.
Exactly.
So why are we doing that, other than to maybe get some public exposure? But that's not really allowing us to maintain our mission. I'd rather get $2,000 in positive flow and put it towards the mission than basically end up $2,000 in the hole. And
what I'm seeing actually, which is really cool, and I think it's very entrepreneurial, is that people that are passionate about their cause, and it could be someone who just donated $5 or $10, they're actually doing their own fundraiser through their social media for that cause. So it could be, they're doing it for food, or for child mental health, or it could be, for after school programs, whatever it happens to be, homelessness.
Right.
And they are just doing their own fundraising. So I think that really, to me, is the future of fundraising. The future is to have our donors reach out to, their audience and their connections, not giving it to us. So we're not going to ask them for their database,
right,
but have them as advocates, and cheering, raring fans, and loving us enough where they're going to help us raise money that way.
So how do you do that? How do you cultivate, like, for those that are nonprofits that are maybe listening to this, that are smaller nonprofits, maybe have not, are just starting? Because I have a feeling there will be probably a lot of nonprofits that come out of this crisis that we're going through right now. I mean, one that comes to mind, which is not a nonprofit, but it's definitely a grassroots effort that's been extremely effective. A friend of mine, Stephanie Odo in San Clemente, that she's got about 50 people sewing masks that are being donated.
Right.
Solely.
Yes.
I mean, they got so big so quick that she's only focusing on large humanitarian efforts, I think is what she posted to me. They ended up even donating like about 1,300 masks to the USS Teddy Roosevelt a couple of weeks ago.
That's amazing.
And this is just people that are basically sewing masks. They have a drop-off location. They have delivery of raw materials location, volunteer labor force, volunteer materials. Within a period of 2 to 3 weeks, they basically are operating an organization that is absolutely impressive in terms of just logistics, right?
Right.
And so there's going to be things that come out of this. So for people who are listening right now, right,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the things from your experience that you can basically share as far as the future of nonprofits or future of fundraising?
Well, that was just, one idea. I would say you would, share those campaigns, like a campaign idea. You want to run your own campaign and do it on social media. So you provide the tools. I've actually seen that on websites for nonprofits just recently for Giving Tuesday Now, which is today.
Today's Giving
Actually,
Tuesday, yeah.
Giving Tuesday Now is today.
And Cinco de
so
Mayo.
so I know the givingtuesday.org website is actually providing nonprofits with tools, which cost nothing, and it's fantastic. They can create their own page. So there's that. A nonprofit actually could offer other nonprofits a way to get promoted on their own website. So
can we connect Tuesdays and tacos and giving somehow? I mean, I'm going to put that out to people. Like, if anybody has an idea of how to creatively come up with a fundraiser, hashtag Taco Tuesday Giving Tuesday tacos.
Sure, I'm sure it's out there already. We just have to look it up. So I think that's the key. The key is really to get your fans involved. Get your fans involved in your nonprofit. Again, it's about relationships, and have the nonprofits reach out to other nonprofits to see what tools are available that are free. There's a lot out there. And I think it's just being resourceful, nimble, pivoting.
Well, and give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to 10C, which has been very instrumental in Orange County for a very long time. They've had a change of name. I can't remember. Do you remember what it was before 10C?
I don't remember.
It was something else.
I do remember it starting.
Yeah, it was something else, but then it became 10C. It's in Santa Ana. They provide a lot of assistance, like training, grant writing, skill classes, things of that nature. So if you're a nonprofit that's just starting, or you're thinking of starting a nonprofit right now, you may want to check out the resources. To Barbara's point, there are resources out there for you to take advantage of everything from documents, forms, grant writing classes, to skill development classes, or even maybe connection with people that are been seasoned in that industry for a while. Maybe they retired and stepped away, that are continuing to volunteer in that capacity.
Yes.
And those could be people that could end up being on your advisory board. That's another thing that I would suggest to a lot of people that are starting, is don't wait too long before you not only build your board capacity in terms of skill set strategically, but also reach out to people that form an advisory board. Because
I agree.
To your point, right? Because that tends to be, my experience, it tends to be a later thought that happens. But if you actually have those kind of, if you will call them ambassadors, not necessarily advisors, but ambassadors for your organization, they could actually be very instrumental in the sustainability and growth of your organization.
And I think at the beginning of a nonprofit, what I'm experiencing with Extraordinary Lives is that they have passionate people on the board. It's really not a fundraising board per se. Right. It's more passion, it's skill set. It's a variety of skill sets, and they add a tremendous value to what the foundation's purpose is and their mission is. So,
well, and every organization goes through its own life cycle. So
yes,
you need those people, but also, strategically be aware that at some point, if not now, when, you're going to want to basically build that other capacity. So, the passion is very important for the soul of the organization, but then you also need that relationship, that person with a book of contacts that are not just acquaintances, but are actually genuinely connections and relationships that you can draw on. Those are things that I think are going to become more and more important as we go forward, because the competition isn't going to get any less. Like I said, we're just going to end up with more nonprofits from this crisis, like we normally do, to be added to the whole plethora of nonprofits in Orange County. You and I were joking about the fact that in places, for example, like San Clemente, but it's common all over Orange County, between every nonprofit and a nonprofit is a nonprofit. So you could easily trip over yourself on nonprofits.
But the problem is too that I think some nonprofits are really hurting during this time.
Yes.
Because their cause is not as compelling or as needed.
For the moment. Yeah, absolutely.
Food, shelter, and water. those are basic needs. So those, we need to really think about those charities as well.
Save the Elephant isn't on my radar screen right now. Like, you know,
It's a good
providing.
example.
Yeah, well, and I know the gentleman who's involved in it, so shout out to him, but to Simon. But it's a very worthwhile organization. They draw a lot of money from one major fundraising event that they hold every year. But like, I don't think if you're in Orange County, saving the elephant right now, it's not that you don't care, but it's not in their high priority list of the top 3 things that you're focusing on if you're going to give and donate. Plus, I think the other reality that we're facing is that you have 30 million people in this country that basically just went on the unemployment. So regardless what the rapid response is after the COVID crisis and we rehire and people build up, there was also a concern about a recession coming in. So that might not move as fast as possible. Nonprofits that are basically dependent on, what's that line from Scarlett O'Hara? Something about on the kindness of strangers. I survive on the kindness of strangers, something like that.
Yes.
Right. Nonprofits pretty much are all Scarlett O'Haras. They all survive on the kindness of strangers, right? And I'm sure I botched that line, but you get you guys get what I'm saying. There's going to be a hit in terms of discretionary funding and donations when it comes to that. So, people may basically switch to volunteering, for example. So how do you find?
But I would say if you're not working, that's a really good way to go. I mean, nonprofits are going to need help.
Well, and it's a good way for you. We talk. You mentioned a couple of times pivoting. It's a good way to actually get your foot in the door again, because you could start, and I know a lot of people that's how they started. I'm not going to name names, but there's people you and I probably know, and you're probably an example of that. You kind of mentioned that, going back into that, it provided you an opening. But Encore Careers, people that are wanting to go back into the workforce, they may be wanting to do it now that their kids are grown, that their demands on their expenditures are a little bit less financially driven, that they can have a little bit more of a mix between financial reward and sort of like, soul food, if you will.
Right.
It's a great way to get in.
I like the way you put that. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a way to get in, and as a volunteer, it provides you the ability to interview the organization as well as them interviewing you. You find your sort of niche within their mission of what maybe resonates with you, and it may be leading that food delivery program. It may be reaching out to people that are in the corporate environment to make the connection. It could be literally hands-on training or in classroom. I mean, depending, I'm thinking of like Hope organization. I'm talking about Hope Center for the Arts, and I think if you're considering finding a purpose to ride this time because you're not maybe working 100% of the time, I think it's a great way to be involved. It's a great way to feel good about yourself, to give to others. And there's so many of them. Like, if I sat down for 10 minutes, or you sat down with 10 minutes with somebody and said, well, what is it that you care about? We probably could come up with a list of 5 places that they should be probably call within 5 or 10 minutes of having a conversation with them. So, again, 1OC, you can reach out to them. You can find out, all these organizations. Somebody told me at one point there was like something like 5,200 organizations in Orange County or something like.
Oh, that seems high. There might be. It just depends how you look at it. But
size.
It was around 1,800, something like that. Nonprofit organizations.
I mean, I think after this conversation we're having here, there's probably going to be like a Joe or Jane's, Giving Tuesday Tacos or nonprofit or something .org.
I would just suggest everybody just give a little bit today. It's a special Giving Tuesday because it is for the COVID-19 suffering, really specifically. Right. There will be a Giving Tuesdays, traditionally the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, and we're all very thankful for how much we have. And so today is just a very special new, basically COVID-19. It's right. An emergency Giving Tuesday, and just whatever anybody could do, I think it would be wonderful.
Well, and the nice thing about what's going on right now too is with a lot of organizations that have maybe had to segue away or pivot away from their brick and mortar existence in terms of actually, but they're for-profit versus nonprofit. They have also now teamed up with other nonprofits, or they've provided a vehicle for donations, everything from donations for masks, for health, for, first responders, food banks, whatever. I mean, a lot of companies right now are also partnering with nonprofits to provide that, because they're out there trying to basically pivot their business for exposure through internet, through pickup and delivery, whatever. I mean, I went to pick up at a couple of places, and there were, there's food collection spots in those restaurants. Right now, there's a couple of companies like I know that are actually also, they're making donations, mass companies that are making donations to organizations or hospitals as well. So let's talk a bit about this importance of pivoting, because I think we just spent a whole bunch of time talking about how it's important for nonprofits to do that, to get creative in how they do that, right? I think that applies to everybody right now, don't you think? Do you agree? Like, if you're
oh, absolutely. Oh, with careers and seeing all the different skills. Yeah. Well, no, pivoting is critical.
It's critical, right? I mean, whether you're from an individual on an individual level, on a sole proprietor level, on a nonprofit level, on even a larger corporation level, if you've been an ocean liner that has been basically chugging away, very much steady, you probably just had to avoid an iceberg or of some size going through this, right? And so,
I mean, we can just take restaurants is a great example, right? So if you had an online opportunity, your business was online, your menu was online, you're pretty okay. Your sales are probably down, but you haven't lost all your customers, and people are very loyal right now. They really want to support businesses that they love. If you did not have an online presence and you closed your doors, I don't know that those doors are going to open again, right?
Well, but you and I have talked about this before, and I've actually kind of shared it before on other shows. Is I found two kinds of people during this: growth mindset and bunker mentality. Okay, and neither one is wrong or right. I'm just don't take any kind of tone out of my voice. Obviously, I'm caring more about like growth mindset, but you're either growth mindset or bunker mentality. Now, it doesn't mean that you cannot learn, but I don't think it's an option to not pivot or have a growth mindset right now, because those restaurants that you're talking about, let's stick with the restaurant example. If you were already in the business of doing pickup and delivery, in my experience, a lot of the businesses that were doing that, unless they're a larger organization, a larger chain that has a very much systematic, logistically laid out plan to do that, it was a revenue stream that you kind of did, but you didn't really push. You didn't, you got on Yelp.
Right.
Some of your orders may be on Yelp. You got on, Uber Eats, but then you begrudgingly were using Uber Eats or Grubhub because they took so much out of the check for themselves, right? Mm-hmm. So you kind of dipped your toe in that water, but you didn't really push it or promote it or develop it. Then this happens, and you realize that either you're kind of stuck in the fact that, oh my God, I can't wait till the thing opens because otherwise I'm not going to make it. Or you look at that, you go, I need to figure out a way to basically make this happen even more. So maybe now I'm not doing Grubhub. Maybe now I'm doing my own delivery. Maybe I have a small little smart card, and I basically keep on one of the people that was working there, and now they're, because they live close by, and they're basically doing the pickup and deliveries. And I then basically promote and develop that beyond just a triage thing that's going to carry me over this. I develop this into additional promotions. And if you're doing that as a restaurant, and then with the relaxation of the regulations on ABC, where you can now be selling alcohol on part of the delivery, I mean, just think about that for a minute, right? Try putting that genie back in the bottle after this. That's not going to happen. The margins on alcohol,
right? Exactly. The margins on alcohol, true.
Right. The margins on alcohol are too high. Now, that doesn't mean, trust me, I looked into a drink yesterday. I think it was like either, I can't remember whether it was like a Mai Tai or I think it was like a Mai Tai, and it was like $7. Like, it didn't get any cheaper because it's being picked up. It's still the same price tag I would pay for it at that bar, but that is a lot of profit margin in the alcohol side of things. So ABC, it's going to be interesting to see if the health department and the ABC board tries to bring that back into only on premises. Or is it too late now because of this, that now the restaurant business actually has a benefit that came out of COVID?
Well, I think so. It's all how you play it, right? I mean, you see it as an opportunity, or you don't see it as, you see it as a real challenge, and it's up to you.
Dare I say how you pivot?
Right.
How you pivot.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. So you just, maybe nonprofits, are going to have to hire more contractors or consultants, instead of hiring, people that are in development departments and they're really top heavy. They're just going to have to really think of new ways to get donors to participate. And I think really, honestly, social media is going to be huge. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn is huge for nonprofits.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed that,
well,
but...
no, yes. And I've also noticed that, for the longest time, LinkedIn was sort of the hidden jewel. People didn't deal with LinkedIn like it was social media. They didn't deal with LinkedIn like it was it was your depository of your CV, kind of. It was the depository of your business persona. But ironically, what was interesting is people who kind of saw the light realized that the person who is just on checking their messages on LinkedIn right now, or checking out, some business related stuff on LinkedIn right now, 10 minutes earlier had actually been posting very passionately and verbosely on Facebook and Instagram. It's the same person. They didn't change because they switched to another browser window, right? So there were some people that were they were still dealing with this, like, okay, I got my business clothing on, I am in LinkedIn. Then I basically only show up and it's like a different persona.
Well, I still think that it's true. I mean, I would say
to a degree,
LinkedIn, there's decorum, there's expectation, there's business, there's a way to handle your business on LinkedIn that you're not going to handle on Facebook. And when I see people, trying to use some of these platforms the same way, it really doesn't work.
Well, but I will say this too, Barbara, is that the formality of LinkedIn, that a lot of people maybe approach it. And I've been on LinkedIn from day one. I mean, I've been on LinkedIn so long that I actually have my picture with an 8x10 logo on the front cover of the Orange County Business at one point, because LinkedIn did not have an Orange County category. We actually formed a group called We Are Orange County, and we pressured LinkedIn to basically provide an Orange County category, because LinkedIn actually had an LA, Greater LA, and Greater San Diego. They did not have Orange County. And so there was a group of us that basically showed up and actually designed like a logo with the orange, We Are Orange County. And it still exists. That group still exists on LinkedIn, right? To pressure LinkedIn, like, why? What do you mean? You don't get counted? So there was the early days, and there's sort of this formality of using LinkedIn. I think we have changed in our messaging, and especially after what we just went through, to where authentic, real, non 8x10 glossy content, and that is what builds the relationships. Don't give me your packaged, canned content, because that I am not listening to anymore. There's a whole plethora of that out there, and I'm not listening to that. The connectivity, the real relationship building now is based on that courageous, unfiltered content. That, it's to your point, done with etiquette, done with with appropriateness. It's not a free for all, shoot first, ask questions later on LinkedIn, but the format is changing. Because I'm noticing even during this period of COVID, how the postings have changed. And to what you just said, yes, some people have actually misused it, because they did not realize that there's still a different approach. But it is an untapped resource. If you are not basically leveraging LinkedIn right now as a nonprofit or as an organization or even as a person, if you're not leveraging it correctly for the full effect that it is, you're missing out on something. You agree?
And a lot, yes. And sales organizations today, are you kidding me? I mean, even I remember back in 2013, 14, that was a tool. LinkedIn is a great sales tool. So every person should really, and if you're networking, building relationships, working with people, it's a fantastic tool.
Just just do not send me unsolicited, introductions via direct message that are basically your initial catalog. Like, do not do that. That is again going to that point where, like, you're taking familiarity with something just because you got added, or I added you, or you added me. Like, don't send me the collateral material. Like, build the relationship.
You need to build a relationship.
Build the relationship. Exactly.
People will want to link in with me, and I'm always saying why. What is our what can we do together? How can we create synergy? You know, don't just link in with me because you need like 1,000 people to link in with, because that bores me. I'm not doing it. And actually, I deleted, I don't know about you, Rod, but I have called my LinkedIn connections so that it makes sense for my life. So I have, it's like my tribe. And I have a group of people that I can go to as advisors, as coaches, you know, people I admire, as leaders, you know, in this thing called, you know, professional life, that's meaningful. It's just not everybody you know.
No, it's not. It's not about.
Like
it's not about. It's not about quantity. It's never been about quantity. It's about quality, and it's, and to it's really about relationships. Like I don't mind adding people. To be honest, I don't mind adding people. I have a lot of. I'm very non-linear. I have my fingers on a lot of things, and so I do like to be able to expose to different mindsets, different ideological thoughts, and all this stuff. It just makes me wider. But do not, please, take liberty with the fact. I mean, that is the worst thing you can do in building a relationship block that is positive, is basically to bombard me. And I don't care if the first sentence sounds like, you know, we know each other from, you know, a drinking party down the street about a week or so ago, because I'm still going to read past that. The minute I start seeing links and things that are boilerplate regurgitations, I basically turn you off. Build the relationship first.
LinkedIn should not be used as a database. Bottom line, So it's just how you use it, and don't abuse it.
Okay, so let's talk about something that I promised I would tell people about at the end of the show, that you and I are doing together. Okay, because we had a really interesting conversation, and I told you, I said even before you and I were talking about it, if I had to summarize what was going on right now, and I'm not going to use COVID as being that it's something that's coming and going. I think I think we went through a paradigm shift, individually in a lot of cases, and organizationally in some cases as well. And I think it's just almost like a necessity skill going forward. And it's not a survival skill. I think it's a grow and thrive skill. That currently may seem to be a survival skill, but it's actually much more than that. And it is if I had to summarize the whole thing in one word, the word would be pivot. Okay, that's how I look back at the last 60 days. It's the hashtag pivot. That is the word that I would basically look at. But it has.
Well, it's also, you know, it's being flexible and creative, and yes, and it's actually, to me, I mean, we're old enough to have gone through this a few times.
Yeah.
So what I know is that this is normal. I mean, honestly, this is what normal looks like.
Right.
Oh, that was funny. My internet connection, I don't know about
that. You've been going in and out on the video thing, but your audio has been consistent, so don't worry about it.
Oh, good. Okay, good. I would say that, you know, we went through something like this in the early 90s. Then we went through it again after, you know, 9/11.
Yep.
We went over it again in 2008. There's, you know, they used to call it right sizing when that happened in the 90s. And I really think it's a lesson for all of us that, you know, nothing stays the same. We need to continue to grow. And I would like to call it a growth mindset. Yeah. So you have goals, but really you need to always focus on growth. And one thing that is important to me is that I go back to school every 10 years, whether it's a class, it's a workshop, it's something significant at a university, because life changes, things change, and we need to be able to adjust. And I don't think it's survival as much as it's just being adaptable and growing. And it helps us actually to stay young and relevant and viable, you know, and, you know, we need to learn. It's a continual learning process.
Well, but you might be more susceptible to that, Barbara. There are people that basically could look at it. I'm just playing devil's advocate, because you and I are the same this way, right? But I can't help playing the devil's advocate. I put a mic in front of me and I'm going to play devil's advocate. But the thing about it is, I think a lot of people, the human condition sometimes is reluctant for change. As much as we know that the only constant is change, we tend to maybe have a setting that's reluctant to change, reluctant to adapt. We get comfortable. You know, I've achieved certain means of comfort, certain means of shelter, food levels that I'm accustomed to. Some people actually like, okay, I've got it. I've received it. I'm done. Now, a lot of baby boomers had a reality check in 2008 when they realized not only am I living longer than I expected, but I also didn't put enough away in my 401ks, or even if I did, I took a hit on it. So to your point, yes, 1991, real estate market crashed. We had an economic situation across the whole country. California was sort of spared a little bit the duration because we were on the later end of it. So it didn't take us as long to get out of it, but we still felt it, especially when we are so heavily geared or dependent on real estate development. Real estate market took a crash. We took a hit.
Yeah.
9/11, different reality, different reasons, but again, we were challenged. And in a lot of cases, because there's sort of uncertainty, that downsizing, or right sizing that you're talking about, put a positive label on a bad thing, but that takes place. And then 2008, again, we got hit with this thing. I think every single one of those times, maybe part of this sort of reluctancy to admit that things change, we all thought the party was going to go on and it was never going to end. Like it's just party's going to just keep going. Parties keep going. We instinctively knew that the party was never going to just keep going, that at some point the waiter is going to have to show up and, with the bill, and somebody's going to have to pay for it.
Right.
Right. But we still felt, let's see, maybe we can get a little longer. Maybe it's a little longer. And so I think right now we have a choice. Individually, corporations, societies, communities, we have a choice. We can look at this as being a wake-up call, or not even a wake-up call, a reminder, a reconnection with what is sort of important, and look at the pivoting as not as a hardship and an arduous thing, although I will admit it will be difficult in some cases because you're going to have to learn new skills, continue to be relevant, if you will. But I would look at it as something to embrace as a new adventure, as something that's actually exciting. Okay? Because if we do, and if we apply creativity to it and how we do that, and we're not limited because we can be as customized, as each individual, like, what do you want to do? How would you pivot? Right? There's nothing.
Well, it's dreaming. People can dream again. Let's dream again.
It is. It's dreaming. So with that being said, you and I, had a really good conversation about this in just an overarching topic, and thought, you know what, maybe to help in that messaging, we would bring on stories of that would be positive reference points, give examples. It may be things that are happening right now because of this. It may be success stories of people who have done this in the past that can be shared, because you and I, like you said, you and I have been around long enough that we have seen this happen a number of times. So we're not as scared by it or worried about it because we've been there before. We've done it. Yes, maybe later on in life right now, it may manifest itself in a different manner, but we've been through this before, and there is a day after. And for some people that are maybe on the younger side of the workforce, they may have never gone through this. I mean, the 2008 may have been just a scrimmage that they barely felt, but we're talking 12 years later, right? So if somebody started working at the age of 20, they are now 32 years old. It's a different reality now than if it's my first job and my only expenses is, whether I can cover my rent with my roommate.
Imagine if you're coming out of college, these kids coming out of college, and they're not even allowed to walk in their college graduation. I have a nephew who is graduating from law school, and he was worried that his law school, his legal job, is it still going to be there? I mean,
I saw a posting from my sister today. One of my nephews is graduating high school. The other one is is starting high school. So it's transitioning from one to one milestone to another. But there was a conversation then there's even posting, like a couple of articles I saw, where there's a discussion right now that if you have been basically admitted, you've got an acceptance from a college, and it's a college that's far away. Right now, would you still go? Because distance learning may be your option. Like, you might actually relocate to where that college is, but you may still not be able to be on campus because of the need for distance learning. The classroom sizes may be limited.
Why spend that kind of money, right?
Right. So one of the things that is being discussed right now, and I think universities are maybe smartly allowing this, is that you apply for a deferment You stay home. Maybe you work at something. Maybe you do something electronically. Maybe you take some classes. Like my nephew got accepted in a summer school at a prestigious university, and it's like they're going to have to do distance learning for that. They can't actually go on campus as an introduction to the campus and the lifestyle and all this stuff being in dorms. They can't do that. So you're going to have to. So people are now talking as we enter into that period of summer and what's going to happen in the fall. People are talking about deferring.
Right.
So it is.
Well, I don't know if you heard this. There was a talk that Mayor Garcetti was giving a couple days ago, and there was a speaker that he brought in basically talking about a lot of kids in the LA school districts are deferring or they're declining their college acceptances.
Yep.
Because they're worried about their families. They've got families now that don't have work. They thought they would help with college. So we've got a whole nother crisis on our hands that is coming.
It's a crisis, but it's also an opportunity, Barbara, because that younger generation right now, if you think about it, is being engaged in reality of life in a different manner. And that is a younger generation that is not limited by lack of creativity, that they have not been honed by limitations so much. So it's also potentially an interesting time, an exciting time for what could come out of that, what could manifest itself out of that sort of generation. But the point is that this is a generation that, unless you are so young that you will not remember this period, every single person on the planet globally has been impacted by this. And those people that are in this young generation that, I remember when I graduated high school and I was going to go to college, my only concern was, how am I going to spend my summer? This is a generation right now that's graduating high school was going to go to college, and basically they're thinking about their families. They're thinking about realities of job, funding, financing, whether they go, they don't go, do they defer? Those are heavy duty decisions to be made at that point, at that very impressionable point in your life. And it's not spared by anybody, whether you're going to a public school, whether you're going to community college, whether you're going to an Ivy League college. That is a shared experience now by all those graduates. So to that point, and because there's so many facets to this, and there's so much a challenge, but also an opportunity, you and I basically decided to do something. And so
what are we going to do?
So do you want to tell them, or should I tell them?
Well, you can tell them. I'm really excited to be part of this, Rod. You tell. Go ahead.
Okay. So, well, I will say that Barbara was kind enough to accept an invitation to basically host a new show on Golden Seal Productions. And that show will be called Creative Pivoting. Of course, we've been talking about pivoting for the last 45 minutes. So it's going to be called Creative Pivoting. And the premise of the show is that we are going to basically try to bring stories that are successful stories, maybe share best practices, challenges, lessons learned along the journey kind of thing, but specifically to this topic, to the topic of pivoting, whether it's personal growth pivoting or whether it's organizational pivoting, whether it's something that stemmed out of a crisis, stemmed out of a milestone in life, a personal challenge, a struggle with with a family member, what have you, loss, opportunity. We're going to basically try to focus on the pivoting, not so much the result of the pivoting would be part of it, or the initial, but the actual pivoting, like that what is that catalyst? What does it look like? What does that moment feel like? And have people basically come and share that on a show called Creative Pivoting, which will be hosted by Barbara. And we will probably start bringing those episodes to people pretty soon here. We're pretty close. So again, I want to thank you, my friend, for saying yes to doing that. I think it's
very excited. And I'm thinking of people right now, just with what you just said, Rod, that I think will be very interesting. It'll be very interesting because there are people also pivoting to taking care of their parents when their children aren't raised yet. There's just so many changes going on, and people are adjusting and adapting. And
well,
it's cool.
And as much as it is a challenge and a burden, and it sometimes, I think just maybe collectively by sharing those stories, by providing almost, if you will, a virtual support group or depository of information, I think it could also be seen as an opportunity. So again, mindset is key. Are you a growth mindset? Are you an opportunity mindset? Are you a a bunker mentality. And if you're a bunker mentality, that's okay, because if you actually embrace the possibility of an alternative reality, that bunker mindset will be temporary. It'll be your, a stage, if you will, and then you'll find your own path to thriving in a different capacity. In fact, it may be in a way that you've never really thought about being able to do. You might have skill sets that, we talked about this very beginning when I had you on before we started recording, is that you may have some skill sets, you may have some things that are talents that you haven't really even explored deeply.
Right.
And that this may be an opportunity for you to do that by pivoting.
I agree.
So
Okay, so let's see.
with that being said, come join us when Barbara starts her show. And I look forward to seeing who you are going to invite. And anybody who's interested in being on Barbara's show, reach out to us. You can contact us through Golden Seal Productions for right now. There will be at some point a online booking link on there that you can book to be on Creative Pivoting with Barbara. I can't wait to see who you got in mind.
It's going to be crazy because I have some crazy ideas. So it's going to be fun.
Well, I think,
there's some really cool people out there. They're pivoting, they're twirling around, they're coming up with new great ideas, Yeah.
So come back and join us for twirling around and pivoting. And we just expanded the scope of the show, I think. Thanks, Barbara, for joining me today. I appreciate you sharing your story, and I'm really looking forward to having you do that show. And so with that, I wish you a good day.
It's been my pleasure, and I've just enjoyed getting to know you, Rod.
Likewise.
What a great show, great network you have.
Thank you so much. Happy to have you be part of it. Talk to you soon.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.